All right, we are live once again. Welcome. This is Watchers Talk Live. We're coming to you live once again on Facebook today. We have a really good show for you coming up today. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good morrow, depending on where in the world you are listening to this. I am Leonard O'Neill, your host. Today we have a really good show coming up, but you know, before we do that, we know we're going to do some shout-outs over here. We always do. We love to do shout-outs only for the people who need to have shout-outs done for, because they're the ones who are doing the good deeds, right? Portal to Ascension. Always a shout-out to Portal to Ascension. We're working with those guys in the background. We're helping them. They're helping us. We're doing all kinds of good stuff. They got a tour they're going on right now, North American tour, as we speak. Currently going across the United States. So go to portaltoascension.org or watcherstalk.com. Take a look at where their events are. They might be at a city near you with some really cool people traveling around with them and doing all kinds of really good speaking. So you might want to look. You might want to be able to show up and watch that stuff, or watch on webinar. I'm pretty sure you can watch it from your home. Either way, take a look at that, because they got some really good stuff going on. They're going to travel around the United States. They're going to end up in Canada coming up here on June 13th, I believe the date is. And our producing director in the background, Omar, is going to go and meet them over in the west part of Canada, in Vancouver, because he lives in that area. So he's going to go over there and he's going to hang out with those guys. And hopefully, like I said, every time I get my hands going like this, because hopefully we're going to get some cool footage coming out of there, maybe live. I don't know, maybe not. Either way, we're not quite sure, but it's going to be cool. They may just end up giving us a bunch of selfies and then going live when they're in bars and stuff, partying. But either way, that's going to be good material. So we're going to put that on the air for you guys to see, no matter what they do. Hopefully we'll get to see some really cool stuff. Okay, that's going to be bad, right? Badass, right? I hope so. All right, so what else we got going on? Take a look at our calendar. Our calendar is chock full of people in May, and all the way into, we're starting to load up June and July already, right? So, what do we got coming up on our calendar? We got Brian Forrester coming up on our calendar. Oh, what? Yeah, look at the calendar. We got other people, big stuff, big events. I couldn't go down all of them right here because I got like 28 here. So you guys need to go to our calendar, go to watcherstalk.com, hit events, take a look at our calendar, and take a look at what's coming on. We got some really cool stuff. All right, so shout out to Sherry Putnam. Sherry Putnam, behind all of this. She is our coordinating director behind all of this. The only way that we have these people on the air, when we have them on the air, is because she schedules them. We go out, we find them. She goes out, she finds them. Omar goes out and he finds them. The other administrative staff goes out and we find these people. We give them all to Sherry, and Sherry puts all of this together and puts it on our calendar and makes it happen. And makes it happen at a time that's cohesive for us, North America, and their people. Some people, we were just on the air with India. We were in New Zealand, South Africa. We've been talking to people all around the world. Russia, Ukraine, all around the world. She puts that together so that we're on the air where you guys can see it at a time when you don't have to get up at 2 in the morning, and a time when they can see it when it's not 2 in the morning. Isn't that badass? I think so. All right, so Sherry, without her, we would be lost. Omar and I would be pulling our teeth out, yanking our hair out, and I'm already going bald as it is. We don't need any more of that going on. Okay, who else we got? Shout outs to Dino over at Paranormal Into the Night. He's working with us, and we're working with him. We're trying to get our schedules straight. Yesterday or the other day, we went live at the same time. He didn't know it. I didn't know it. We didn't check with each other, and we're going to fix that. We're going to fix that so we don't have that happen anymore. Right? What else we got? Listen, you guys, I don't know if you saw the show. We had Stephen and Evan Strong on here, and I want to do a shout out to Stephen and Evan Strong, because we had them on here, and they got like the 100 million books, right? They got these books that you guys need to go and take a look at. We discussed one, which is their latest book, which was out of Australia. They have other books that have to do with archaeology and history and UFOs and all that stuff. So Origins, that's their site on Facebook. You can go over there and take a look and join. You can buy their books, check out their books. We also, I think we have it on our preferred reading on our website. If not, we'll get them up there so that we have it over there. So go and take a look at that. Let's see, what else do we got here? What am I looking at? Bruce Cunningham with his Advanced Archaeology Review. You guys want to take a look at that, right? Advanced Archaeology Review magazine. We just had Bruce Cunningham on here just the other day, right? We were on here. We were talking to him and Russian scientists, and we want to get them back on here again, talk to those guys. That's going to be pretty cool. I think that's what we got for right now. If not, we'll get the rest of it at the end of the show. That's a pretty big amount now. The show today, we got a pretty good show today. It's very controversial, and this is something that we're really going to be having fun with. We're going to be talking about, first we're going to be talking about with Phil Harris, and we're going to talk about Geo-Engineering. you don't know what that is, that's the when the planes fly and leave contrails, and whether or not those contrails are, well, I don't know. What are they? We're going to discuss that. What are those things going on over there? Are they chemtrails? Are they contrails? Are they seeding the clouds? What's going on? Is it kind of weird stuff? Is it? Well, we're going to talk about all that. So that's what we're going to get into as soon as I turn this over and say hello to Phil. So Phil, say hello to the people out there.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me on, and good to have you all here with us.
Thanks for coming on. Listen, tell the people, give them who you are, give them your background, right? Give them your, I know you got a website, and I know you got a Facebook page there. You got Ancient Esoteric and Occult Wisdom. Tell them about, if you have a website, if you don't, tell them about your Facebook page, your channel on YouTube. Give them a background. Let's start with a background on you and how you got to where you are now, and then give them that information, okay?
All right, well, I've always been into certain things that most people aren't into since a young age, mythology and science, dinosaurs, and, just been very observant of what's going on around me more so than other people. And just, I was an only child, and I moved around a lot. My dad was in the Navy, so I kind of always had to learn how to adapt and pay attention to things going on, and, just be observant of what's going on around you. And geoengineering and chemtrails, it really aren't my specialty, but I started noticing, what's going on in the sky, because I do a lot of star watching and looking up, and I've always paid attention to the stars and the skies and stuff, and I noticed a while back I started seeing these trails and things like that, and so I got into that and, found out a lot of things that most people probably don't know about, but other than that, I'm just into all kind of different areas of study, and I started my research group about 3 years ago, 3 years ago, and met a lot of good people, and just like learning new things and helping other people to learn about things they might not find out on their own or might not know about until somebody points it out to them, and then boom, then they can start. Even if they reject it at first or don't want to believe it, you plant that little seed, and then maybe they'll start seeing things for themselves and paying a little bit closer attention than they used to.
Right, and that's true. Because when it comes to the chemtrails and contrails of aircrafts, I've always looked up. You always see them. You notice me don't really think about it until having my group here on Facebook and discussing things in the group, and somebody started talking about that, and it made me actually go. I started paying attention. Huh, really? And I started looking up and paying a little bit more attention than before. But before we get in that. Tell people what your group is, and tell people how to find you on YouTube, because you got a couple videos that you posted on a YouTube channel. So let them know how to do that, where that's at.
Okay, well, my name is Phil Harris. I don't know if you can search that on YouTube or not and find me. I think you can, because that's the actual name of my channel, but the link is just a bunch of numbers. So I think you can just type in Phil Harris, and if there's another one, there might only be one, but I think I'll be the only one that pops up. So you can just search Phil Harris on YouTube or on Facebook. I have the group you mentioned, Ancient Esoteric and Occult Wisdom. We don't get into much conspiracy type stuff in there, but we do get into it sometimes, because that would be considered occult or esoteric too, because that's things that only a limited number of people know or think about. So we do get into that stuff sometimes, but it's mainly ancient history, philosophy, science, mythology, stuff like that. But yeah, you can just search Phil Harris on YouTube or on Facebook and find me, or look up that group name, Ancient Esoteric and Occult Wisdom.
Yeah, and I've found that on YouTube it's gotten a little weird. So when I tell people, like, to look up Watchers Talk, to look up our channel, pardon me, if you type in, the URL and you go youtube.com/Watchers Talk, you're not going to find it.
They changed it.
What's under that? They changed it to a number now. So even though it's under that, you're not going to find it. So I tell people you have to go to YouTube, youtube.com. Go there. When it loads, go into their search, type in Watchers Talk or Watchers Talk, and it'll find our channel. Same thing with me. When they're looking for me, I tell them the same thing. If you type in my name as a slash, you're not going to find me. But if you go there, for some reason, if you go there and you type in the search, then you'll find my videos. So that's weird that they do that. So I just have to. I get in the habit of saying, go to YouTube, then do a search and type that in. So for the
in the search box, not in the URL box, because it'll say unknown or can't find it or something like that.
In there, you have to go there and use their search engine for their internal website, then type in Phil Harris and it'll bring it up. Like if you type my name, it'll bring it up. Watchers Talk, it'll bring it up there. So it's really weird, and YouTube needs to fix that. They used to be the other way around. I guess now they think they're so big they don't have to worry about us, you know. But they're going to have to eventually, because nobody can type in that with a slash. That's the quickest way to find it. Anyway, so let's get away from that. YouTube's YouTube, right? You just got to live with what we got. So, but you can find him on, either way, you can find him on Facebook by looking up that name, Ancient Esoteric and Occult Wisdom, and you can find his group there. Okay, so today we're going to talk about this whole conspiracy ideology where there's many theories of what's going on and you know, why, who benefits. You know, you look up into the sky, people, and we see aircraft flying in the sky, and we see these trails coming off of the aircraft, and some people say they happen naturally, and we'll get into that, and some people say they don't happen naturally, and we'll get into that, because there's many theories, and I want to discuss probably all of them. And so for you people that are out there in the audience, we would love to have you guys, you know, chime in. Always, you guys have to remember, always, we'd love to have you guys chime in, not just hear us talking like we think we know what's going on in the universe and that we're the all-seeing, all-eyed authority, because we're trying to figure it all out too. So sometimes we like to have you guys give us what your opinion is and think, or even ask us questions, me or the guests that I have on here. So the more interaction that you guys have, the more fun we have. Otherwise, we'll just keep talking to hear ourselves talk, because that's what we do. So right. So okay. So let's start with. You start with one of the theories of what's going on with this whole thing and what you've observed, and then we'll go back and forth and we'll just keep running with it. Okay.
All right. Well, obviously there are real regular contrails. You know, when you look up and you see a trail coming off of a plane in certain conditions, you know, just the right atmospheric conditions, you'll see a trail coming off a plane. Now, normally they'll last for maybe a minute, 2 minutes tops, you know, in just the right conditions, and then they'll fade away. But then you look up sometimes and you'll see some trails that seem to linger, and they'll slowly spread out, and they're obviously just much different than the normal trails that you see. And even on certain days, you can look up and you'll see some planes leaving the normal trails and then some leaving these lingering trails. So, you know, there's a lot of different theories on exactly what's going on or what the purpose is, but in my opinion, it's not a question of whether there is another type of trail now or whether it's chemtrails or something's being sprayed. It's what is the purpose, what is going on, because using logic and reasoning and just observation, you can pretty much see that there's clearly different types of trails that are happening. So you know, we're trying to find out exactly what the purpose or the purposes of it are, and not question whether they're actually happening or not, which it's good to question that too. And people that are just getting started obviously need to question, and you know, might not just take it that yes, there is something being sprayed, but you know, look for yourselves and start paying attention to the sky, and just be observant.
Yeah, and I agree with that. Either way, you have to question everything, because the practical version in theory of what happens is the plane it's hit a certain altitude where your engine and turbine is turning at a certain rate of speed, and the cold air mixing with the hot air as it's coming out of the turbine turning, that creates a vortex, which creates turns the air into vapor, like
water vapor.
Yeah, like you're smoking a vape thing. It turns it into water vapor, which appears to be. And then that comes off of the plane, and then sometimes the wingtips will do the same thing as they're flying. You would see this happen a little bit with the older aircraft that were the older radial engines with the prop planes, where sometimes when they would dive and they would build up a certain amount of speed, and even in the movies you'll see that, where you'll see a couple of contrails come off of the plane. However, I gotta say, just like Phil just said here a second ago, at first I never really thought about it, and these guys have been taking pictures for years. And when I was in construction 10 years ago, there was this one guy, and he was what I called this crazy hippie from Vietnam, who was in the military in Vietnam, and he was the older guy now, and he was this crazy hippie, and he was taking all these pictures, and he started getting me to go, he might have something there, because there was, if you think back, there wasn't as many contrails when I was a kid as there is now. And people say, no, that's not, no, there was not. There's just the same amount of aircraft. In fact, most of the aircraft that are out there are the same ones that were flying. So I don't like to fly commercial. Same planes that were flying for 1 million hours in the air, and then they crash and everybody dies on the plane, because you don't crash and survive. Nobody survives a crash. You're down once and it's over. But some of these planes have been flying. I'm 49. Some of these planes have been flying as long as I've been alive, which scares me. Yeah, so the same planes should have been making the same contrails. And this is my point, in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. But it seems then in the 60s, then the 70s, and the 80s, and the 90s, and the 2000s, now 2010s, it's been increasing the level of contrails in the air. So that kind of got me wondering too. So that's why I'm bringing that up. So the different theories, like he said. So what do you think? Like you said, you got to figure out, what would be the benefit if there is something that they're doing. What are the different things do you think that they're doing? Because we just discussed off air before between you and I and our producer that we came up with 5, 6, 7 different theories. So what do you think is the main theory in your mind, or do you just still not quite sure and we're still looking at everything? What do you think?
Well, I'm not really sold on any one specific thing. I think there's a lot of different theories that have good evidence for them and good reasoning behind them on what could be going on. Before I really get into the exact theories, I'm going to go over just a little bit of the basic information on the different types of trails and maybe a little bit of the history of them, and let's kind of build up to that.
Good idea.
So like you said, you didn't really used to see that many, and if you even start to look at old photographs or old videos people took or movies or anything where there's a lot of filming outside, you're not really going to see any of these lingering trails outside. And like you said, over the last couple of decades, they seem to have started to become more prevalent, and now it's almost a daily thing in many places. And sometimes it'll be a few days you won't see it, and then sometimes they'll just be full of them. It's been probably, I think somebody said back in the 50s or the 60s, even Disney had started coming out with some commercials where they were starting to slowly advertise this thing, and they have a program called cloud seeding, and this is a well-known thing, and you can go look it up, and it's something a service you can pay for, and it's exactly what the chemtrails are, but they don't say that it's they're spraying something that could be harmful or whatever. They advertise it as to help make it rain over your crops, or you can pay these planes and these companies to spray, I think it's silver particles or something that actually create rain. And so it's been building up for a long time. But the actual theories on what's going on or what it could be, there's everything from military applications, and some people say that it's to stop other countries being able to see what's going on the earth, on the ground here, to strategic maneuvering of different convoys and military applications. Some people go as far as to say that they're having nanotechnology in these things they're spraying that enter your body and create health problems, and then that could be for doctors to make more money and things like that. And some people say it's tied into companies that do genetic engineering on crops and things like that to, make other plants not thrive as much, and these genetically modified crops might be able to, won't be affected as much by the chemicals in these trails and stuff. So there's just so many different things. It's hard to pinpoint exactly what it could be, but there's many different theories. I'm not really sold on one in particular, and that's why I like talking to other people about it and getting their ideas too, because there's, nobody really knows. They've done a really good job of covering it up, and they just label it as a conspiracy. They came up with the key term want theory, and now, people just think you're crazy if you talk about it.
Right, and it's true, and that's why we want to talk about it, because are we crazy? Maybe, but you know what? Right, something's going on, and I think that's been the catch-all, and because I was born in the 60s, I grew up in the 70s, and I think that's been the catch-all with people, and I think it still is. It's just like if you're arguing politics and you get to a certain point with a certain group of politicians, and what'll happen is they'll start picking apart, if you're on the internet, they'll start picking apart your spelling and punctuation because they got nothing else.
Exactly.
Right, and then they'll start picking apart your enunciation because they got nothing else, and then it gets back to, that's just like with religious, religion, it gets back to faith, and no matter what you say, the religious people will throw out the word faith. Gotta have faith. Yeah. Pretty soon we come George Michael and we're dancing around. Gotta have faith, and 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 it's the truth, right? I mean, that's what they do. So then there's coincidence. That's the other word that people love to throw around. That is a catch-all that means I really got nothing else left to argue with you about. So I'm just going to jump on a word that means everything. Coincidence. That's why I look at them and go purple. I can make shit up too. So they say you're crazy. When back in the day in the 70s, you were a kook. You were crazy if you believed in UFOs. Now, at the time it was 1% of the population of America. Now, 65% of the population of America believe in UFOs. The weird thing is that 1%, at that same time, 1% of the population would believe in UFOs, but 80% of the population believed in humans that have wings on their back and that fly around with a halo above their head. So, that's weird, right? I don't know what keeps that halo up. Their horns? Mine does. That's what props my halo up. I put my horns in. But that's, so they'd say you're crazy. So same thing, anything that had to do with it that wasn't normal for the normal academic group, or something that's going to change history, or something that tells too close to something that might be going on, then they say you're crazy. The problem that we have in our society is that there are, just like with Christian religion, there's 100 of them. Just like the Muslim religion, there's 100 of them. There's 100 ideologies to tell you every religion. So the same thing's going on with this. Now, we don't know, because it could be any of all of these. It could be half of them. So we don't know. So they are going to say we're crazy. We are going to sound crazy, because just like you just been named off, right? How many was that? We just named off. And that wasn't all of them that I have written down, right? We named off, climate control, right? We named off chemical cloud seeding. We named off nanobots, right? There's just a few. What about people cloud seeding? We talked about that, and I heard that, where they put silver particles, and the silver particles get in the cloud themselves, and it creates, because it falls through the clouds, and it actually forces the water to create bubbles or droplets, and then the water drops onto the ground, and it rains. So so it's really bizarre, and that probably works. So it's probably more than just one, I would think. I don't know if it's just me. Do you think it's more than one of these things going on?
Oh, I think it's definitely more than just one thing, and there might be different applications. The same type of technology could be used for multiple purposes. I mean, if you did just want to make it rain, you might just use one formula or one type of chemical or whatever that just makes it rain. Now, if you wanted to put some type of nanotechnology mixed in with that, you could do that if you wanted to. If you wanted to, some people go as far as to say that they're actually disease particles or in the spray that are meant to infect large numbers of people. I mean, of course, if they wanted to do that, it wouldn't be impossible. It would be very easy. Now, I'm not saying that's the motives behind it, or that it's even anything nefarious to begin with. I mean, of course it could be, but it could very well be something that's for the benefit of a specific group or people in general, and they just don't want people freaking out or knowing what it's leading up to, because it's some big thing they're trying to hide. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's something where they're trying to kill off mass numbers of people or something like that, And
because if it was, at least it happened, right? People would be
exactly. And like he was saying a little while ago, the same people that would be doing this are going to have to be breathing in the same air and eating the same food and the water and stuff like that. So I don't see anybody really trying to poison the whole planet when they have to, eat the same food and breathe the same air and stuff that we all do.
Right. Absolutely. He was referring to, for those of you guys, when we were off camera, we were talking before this, he was referring to Omar, our directing producer. He had said the top 1% is not going to kill themselves by poisoning the air that they have to also breathe. So, and he's right, unless they already have an inoculation to it. But then again, nothing's really changed. So I know there's a lot of fear, and fear can really freak people out. So I would suggest that if anything they're doing, if they're putting something up there, I don't think they're trying to poison us. And you're right, it would be easy, but things are easy when you come up with the idea, but they're not easy in the application. Like, I could say that if I were a foreign country, I'd want to fly over and drop poison into the water supply and poison our water supply here, and thus killing a bunch of people. It hasn't been done, so it's obviously a little harder than you think to do that. People say, well, they could just fly over. No, you can't. You can't just fly from someplace outside of the United States and fly over a water supply without somebody noticing. You have to have a flight plan. You can turn up on radar, stuff like that. So you would have to then come here, get the poison, go to a smaller aircraft, get an airplane, know how to fly it, have the pilot's license, get in the aircraft, file a flight plan that gets you near that water supply. And oh, by the way, we don't just allow people to fly over the water supplies that could poison us. So people don't understand that we have a no-fly zone that's over the water supplies that you could fly over. So once you go into that area, you become suspect, and then the people come after you. And if it's, something, that's why that stuff you think is so easy. People think it's easy because television and movies make you believe that everything is so easy to do that you can just do it and no one will notice that it's happening. And if that were true, 9/11 would happen every day in this country because we would have people from all over the world just waltzing into the country and taking over planes and crashing them into everything. Well, that only happened once, so it's not as easy as you think it is. Right? And even then, most of the people who are smoking up pot think that was done by our own government anyway to grab a bunch of gold, the gold that they already owned, which is weird. So anyway, to make it go away and then not tell anybody that the gold went away. If it was a gold grab, they would say, oops, all of our gold disappeared. So they grabbed the gold disappeared, nobody knows about it. That's kind of craziness that goes on with the crops, with this whole chemtrail stuff too. People say it must be chemtrails, it must be climate control, it could be all of that, which is really scary. But it could be none of that. So, let's talk about some of these individually, right?
Well,
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, on the most surface level, this is what's easily observable, and so let's just start with the most basic theory that it's to create rain and climate control and stuff like that. You can actually watch these things spread out over the course of a day, and I'll here in a minute I'll show you the video I have on my channel, and I'll go over it a little bit. But if you just actually observe these things and watch them, they'll start spraying, and then or you'll start seeing the trails, and then they will slowly disperse out. The sky will turn a little bit gray and overcast, and then either usually that day or within a day or two of that, you'll almost 100% of the time you'll get rain. So it's easily observable that these are creating rain, and that's the most surface level. And so if you just wanted to stop there and say that it's for creating rain, let's say for crops, maybe large corporations that own big fields of crops are using this to water their crops or something like that. That could be the main purpose of them. But that's easily observable. You can watch the thing spread out. The sky will always turn gray or overcast, and it will always rain within a day or two of them. So that's easily observable, and contrails are not going to do that. You can watch a contrail. It will only go out a short distance over the sky. It'll dissipate and it'll be over with. And these other trails do not do that. They spread out. They block the sun out. They cause gray skies and rain almost every single time. So, without even going any deeper than that, they are definitely at least somehow tied into climate control, making it rain or something like that. And then that's where you can start to take it even a little bit deeper and say that, well, it could be some type of technology where they're wanting to alter weather patterns. Like I was saying a minute ago, it's not necessarily always bad. It could be good. I was watching a Star Trek episode a few months ago where Jean-Luc Picard was saying something about, somebody was telling him there was this major storm or this major thing that had happened on planet Earth, and he was saying, well, why didn't the climate control catch it, or why didn't they stop it? Like he was saying, in the future it's pretty much just going to be basic that they can control all this stuff and they can stop it. So this could be the first level of implementation for either altering weather patterns, creating them, stopping them, or some type of climate control system to, not necessarily to harm people, but actually for good purposes too. So it's good to not go in too deep and get all scared, like a lot of these conspiracy people do, that jump in head first and say it's just they want to kill the masses. Some people could be using it for harmful purposes as well, but it's not the only possible scenario going on. It could have good things going on too, and of course they wouldn't want to tell the whole world that they have these capabilities of, we can create hurricanes, or we can stop them, or we can make this storm. It would be cool if people knew that, but maybe they don't want people to know they have those specific capabilities yet, because it's some type of countries are fighting for this technology, who's the best, kind of like with the space race. People that say that the moon landing and stuff was a hoax and stuff like that, they're trying to say maybe they hoaxed it so other countries will think that we had this technology and they'll stop pursuing it or something like that. So it could be something like that going on. They just don't want other countries or people to know that they have these capabilities yet.
Well, and I agree with that, because that would be something that the government would do. And like I said before, I've seen videos where they were doing just that. And one of the guys in the crowd, James Hauer Sr., said they used a sulfur agent to make rain. They used it back in Vietnam. What they have been doing is dropping aluminum oxide. Remember, you just said aluminum, so aluminum oxide, and we all know that aluminum causes Alzheimer's. Right, so that's a problem.
That's where some of the conspiracy stuff comes into play. You know, some of these chemicals that they find in their testing of the water, the ground and the water, they find these heavy metals that are linked to certain health problems. So people just automatically think, you know, they're killing everybody.
Right, and it may not be that their intention was to kill anybody, because at the time they were doing that back in Vietnam, we didn't know back then that aluminum was causing Alzheimer's, or if they did, we didn't. I didn't hear about that until the 80s, going into the 90s. Before that became prevalent. So it may very well been that they were using aluminum oxide to make it rain in different places, and then we found out, obviously, when we come to the future, that the aluminum gets trapped in rain in that plaque in our brain, and that causes Alzheimer's. So it could be just as a side effect, a coincidence, you know, that I hate to use that word again, but it could have just been a coincidence that they used something that they knew worked, just like they used the PCBs and they found out that was poisoning our water, and it also almost killed off the European honeybee. So, you know, they didn't know that at the time, but they were doing it, right?
And even if the people at the very highest level, let's say that some of these people do know the health effects and stuff, the actual pilots and everybody at the lower levels who are taking part in the programs, they might not know the implications of the health risk and stuff like that.
Absolutely, right? Absolutely. So then we have Brent Marshall. They're hiding something, and I also have a great photograph of some kind of. Now my screen's jumping because people are typing to me. I also have a great. Where was that here? A photograph of some kind of object next to the sun that I took from Oxnard, California last summer. This says still think that there are that they're hiding some sort of planetary system or something, and it's very possible. I mean, they're hiding something. We all know that, guys. The American government.
What was that again? That they were hiding what? What was that again?
Hiding something. They're hiding that he took a picture that it was an object that was next to the sun that he took from Oxnard, California in the summertime. So he still thinks that they're hiding something, maybe even a planetary system. So they are hiding.
Yeah, that's one of the big theories too. Is that they're a few different things, either blocking out the sun because the sun gives life and power, and you know they're trying to block some of that energy that's supposedly helping to raise people's consciousness. You know, that's one of the theories, that they want to block out some of the solar energy. Like you just said, some people say that as part of these coming cycles that's going on, that there's new planetary bodies and different types of crafts or planets or something in the sky that's showing up that they want to block out. That's one of the other theories. So it gets really deep.
Right. Then I want to say that Ernest Montijo. I don't know if I said your name right, Montijo. I didn't bring this up, buddy, but I'm going to bring it up because I used to live in Arizona. Ernest says the whole rain thing is not correct. Laughed my ass off. He says, I live in Arizona and I see them almost daily, and we don't have any rain. Right? Now I didn't bring that up yet. I was going to get to that, Ernest. It's a good thing you brought that up. I lived in Arizona for 5 years. I just came back to California, and you're right, buddy. Well, over in Arizona, for those people who don't know, it's the middle of the desert. Arizona, New Mexico, and most of Texas, the west part of Texas, is a big desert that we all live in out there. And I lived over in Queen Creek. Ernest, I don't know where you lived. That was 45 minutes east of Phoenix, about 25 miles, 30 miles south of AJ. I don't know where you were at, but I was out there in the desert, and we saw those chemtrails too, and there was a bunch of them, and they were crisscrossing the sky like a spider web. But there's also another theory behind that, Ernest, so we'll get to that in a minute. But we didn't get any rain either, okay? No matter how many times those chemtrails were there, we still only got monsoon rain, and that was September, October, and sometimes in November, and that was the only time of the year. If we were lucky in August, we would get some. That was the only time that we got any kind of rain. So it didn't matter how many often the rest of the time of the year those contrails were crossing that sky, going from one end of that big sky to the other end of that big sky. We didn't get any rain. So, but
well, that's actually, I mean, that's a good point. Actually, I mean, if they're some, I'm just going based on my observations and what happens here. I mean, every time I see them, it normally does rain soon afterwards, and it's much more than normal. But that just goes back to what I said, to where they could have multiple purposes. Maybe not all of them are to make it rain, you know, or maybe certain parts of the country that have natural weather patterns, that's a side effect of whatever is in these, is that certain parts of the country, it does make it rain more. But that would also help to to the idea that it's not just for rain. What he said is because there's some places that it doesn't make it rain all the time. So that would be more logical evidence to say that it's not just for rain.
Yeah, you would have to have moisture in the air for it to collect and make it rain. You just couldn't make it, I mean, unless you're a Native American and you know a really good rain dance to make it. I've seen that. Otherwise, I don't see that happening. So yeah, I agree with him, because you would have to have clouds, you'd have to have moisture in the air to make that happen. So, but I also agree that why would they even try? I mean, I can see them trying at one point to do that and make it rain, but they would have long given up trying to make it rain in the desert. Even if they let's put 100 planes out there, they would have long given that up, because they would have tried all that in the 60s and the 70s, and they would have realized there's just not enough moisture in the air to make it happen. You have to already have moisture in the air to make it happen. So
that's why I'm sure that it's not just for rain. I know that it's deeper than that, but that is one use of it, and that is one particular side effect for most parts of the country where there's already certain weather patterns or moisture in the air. Like here in Memphis, it's really humid pretty much all of the time. So maybe, as a side effect of what's in these trails, it does make it rain more, but that might not be the sole purpose of them, and I don't think it is the sole purpose.
No, I think there's many, and that's why I think it's good that we're talking about this, because you're right. They say we're crazy. But there's many. I think there's many different things happening here. Justin Evans says, the Weather Channel said that if, in quotes, we could somehow block the sun, like you were saying just before you touched on it, if we could somehow block the sun, it would cool the Earth, because if they're putting particles up there it would stop the global warming. And he says, He says, if the Weather Channel says it, that I bet it's already being in use. And I think that you might be right, Justin, that it might already be. We were just discussing that, where in certain areas, maybe in Arizona, maybe in those hot areas, what's happening out there is not seeding of the clouds, but it's like Phil said earlier, maybe it's there that they're putting so much of it up there because it really does cover a lot of space over in the sky in Arizona. The big spider web up there of these things that go from sky to sky, from end to end. That's not, you can see, we can see a candlelight at 10 miles away with the human eye. So if we can see that in the daytime, we can see hundreds of miles in the sky going back and forth. So maybe in some places there is a different application. What do you think about that, Phil? You think, we were just talking about that.
Definitely. Yeah, I think that kind of like going back to what Omar said a little while ago before we started the live feed here, is that it's creating some type of global or semi-global net of some sort for whatever purposes, and that's where it starts to get a little bit deeper. And that, like I was saying a minute ago, maybe just one of the side effects is that it makes it rain more in some places, and I think that's actually what their surface level thing they tell people at. So when people actually start finding out about it and then get into it and say, oh, I know they're real and I'm seeing them and it's raining, I think that's what they want people who first start to get into it to think, is that we're combating global warming. And so they kind of stop there and they're like, oh, well, it's good for us then. I found out what they're doing. They're combating global warming. It's good for people, which that could be part of it too. But I think that's what they give to people, or that's what people find at first when they start to research a little bit deeper. And then most people would probably stop there and say, oh, I figured out what it is. They're combating global warming, and think it kind of ties in with this whole agenda they got to spread global warming in the first place, and say that they need to spend all this money and do all these things to combat it. So, which it could be that partially, but I think it goes deeper than that, and that's just kind of the surface level that they want people to think, is that it's combating global warming.
Yeah, there's other things, other applications, I'm sure. And we have Nenji Samtangan. I don't know if I said that right. I apologize for the last name. He said they spray over at night over here on the Air Force Base like clockwork. So there's stuff going on at night over there where they're flying over and dropping stuff. Now they could be spraying over the airbase to to kill the weeds and to kill the plants, so that people can't just light things on fire, and you don't have somebody sneaking up in the bush. But who knows what else are they doing? So yeah, I agree. I think there's multiple applications. I think there's multiple things going on.
Yeah, go ahead. All right. No. Well, what you were just saying about spraying over the Air Force Base and stuff, without getting too far deep into the conspiracy and killing people stuff and all that, that would be one of the most logical conclusions to it, is that it is some type of military application, and it's to either stop other countries from being able to use their radar and stuff to see what's going on. It's got some type of military application, you know, so without taking it too far, but even getting a little bit deeper than just it's something to do with climate change, it could very easily be that one of the main purposes is some type of cloak or thing to stop these energy radar technologies from being able to see what's going on, you know. So that would be a good thing to look into if you could find somebody who works in that type of field who does radar and says, hey, in this area, you know, find somewhere where they've been spraying a lot, and if you could get an insider or somebody that works radar and say, hey, you know, are you able to see what's going on with your radar after they spray? Or, you know, that would be a good train of research to get on there, is to see if it is being used for military.
Yeah, we know the military does it. I know. Anyways, I've seen, you can go on YouTube and look it up. I don't remember what it was called. One time I went on YouTube and I punched in like chemtrails, and there was one that was being filmed on the inside of a military plane, and the guy had it on, I guess it was a helmet cam, and they were in the back, and it was one of the big cargo planes with the back lowered, and they actually lowered the back down so they could see out the back, and this other guy who was standing over here walked over to the other side of the plane, right up against the wall, and he pushed a button and he grabbed this thing and he went, and when he did, contrails started happening where they weren't doing it before, and they were actually taking these big bags of stuff and going over and putting them in this freaking machine that was shooting that out there at the different angles, you know, from the different things that they were spraying, making contrails. So I don't know what they were doing at that time, because they didn't really say, you know, here we are trying to seed clouds over Iowa or anything like that. So I don't remember what that was, but they actually did that, and they were military, and there was no contrail. When they lowered the thing, you could see none, and all of a sudden, and it wasn't one of those, you know, where they were flying over, and maybe it was just one of those where they're flying over, because we know they do that over sporting events where they have the smoke that they do all the time. They do, that's part of the theatrics of what they do. So we know they already have machines, this is my point, hooked up to aircraft that are capable of making that stuff happen. Not only do we have
definitely.
No, not only do we have the crop dusters with the, you know, with that machine, not only do we have the ones where they drop the stuff on fires and the chemicals, they have the machines that they either dump stuff or make stuff happen and fly and spray. Because, if you watch the Blue Angels, if you watch the Canadian snow geese, what are they called? I think it's something like that. The Canadians, where they have their pilots do the same thing. I've watched them both. They do all the same thing. They've got the same stuff, right? Am I wrong?
No, I've seen it too. I live right next to... I don't know if it still is, but it was the biggest inland naval base in the country. It's NSA Mid-South here in Millington, Tennessee, and they have an air show here every 2 years, and they do the Blue Angels come and all that kind of stuff, and I think they go to other cities after they leave here, but every 2 years we have a big air show, and they have the Blue Angels and all these stunt planes and all kind of stuff like that, and like you were saying, as part of one of these tricks they do, when the Blue Angels or one of these groups of planes, they go to do this dive thing, and then as soon as they start diving, you'll see all these jet streams of, I don't know if it's part of the propulsion or what, but you know, the same exact type of technology that's releasing that stuff could be used to spray these trails.
Yeah, and I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, and my sister now lives in Rio Vista. And if you guys look at the map, you'll see that I'm up Sacramento right now, so I'm a little more north. But from where I used to live in Antioch, I could look out my back window, and I could actually see across the Delta. And I could see the planes from Travis Air Force Base flying around. And I used to go out there, and then my sister's closer at Rio Vista. You can look out her back window, the same thing. You can see the planes flying over at Travis Air Force Base and coming in and going taxiing and flying around circles to the guys in the big, huge planes getting airtime, doing landings and stuff like that. And I used to go up there because, like he said, every couple of times a year, they would have the show, the Canadian Snowbirds, and they would have the Blue Angels, and they would do the shows, and they would do flying, you know, boom, and all that stuff, and the guys going up, and all that stuff would come on at the right time. It's something that they push inside the cockpit that turns it on. So if they have that just for shows, then why would they not be able to have that as an application to do other things, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I've actually seen pictures, you know, which I can't always say that they're 100% credible or this and that, but I've seen pictures of insides of planes where they actually have the rigs set up. And what it is, on the few that I've seen, is they have all of the seats taken out of these planes, and they have these large tanks, and they're all connected to each other with valves and hoses and high pressure valves and all this type of stuff. And you know, I got into a big debate one time, and I was telling somebody about it, and I was showing them, and they were trying to say that it's something to for testing the flight of the plane, where they can change the weight, or they can shift liquids or gas from one tank to the other, to see how the weight shifts if there's passengers, as some type of testing for when they're flying. So that's one of the excuses or arguments people try to use for these pictures that got released of the actual devices in these planes. They're large tanks with hoses, and they're hooked up to nozzles. I mean, it's exactly what you would need to create and spray these things. But then, the argument from some of these people is that it's used for testing. And but I think, like, why would they go through the trouble of having all these huge tanks and lines and all this stuff when they could just use big sandbags or things that look like humans that weigh the same, mannequins or something like that? Why would they need all of these huge tanks with high pressure valves and hoses to? I mean, I see what they're saying, that it could be used to test and to shift the liquids and see how the plane reacts to shifts in weight and stuff like that, but it just doesn't make much sense to me that they would do all of that just for testing purposes.
No, and let me tell you why. My brother still works for FedEx, and there was a time when he worked in the Oakland FedEx airport, and he was what was called a ramp agent. And you know what his job was? His job was to make sure that the plane was perfectly balanced and that the right weight distribution from front to back and left to right was exactly level to the center point in the plane, because if it wasn't, the plane could crash. So they wouldn't be flying a $200 million aircraft up in the air, playing around with it to see what's gonna happen. We already know for a fact that if it's not put together right, you're gonna crash. Okay?
Yeah, that would be figured out in the phase of when they're coming up with the plans for these planes and they're making the first prototypes and all that. They're going to figure out all that stuff then. They're not going to actually have the plane created and then do all this testing to see weight balances and stuff. I mean, it could if it was the first prototype, but
Right. Not right. If it was the first prototype, but not on a grand scale like that, that's just insane, because I'm telling you, it doesn't take much to throw a plane off and have it listing to one side where you have to increase the engines and get it to go back, and you burn more fuel, and you have that also all calculated in your fuel consumption. You have to have the right amount of fuel consumption to get you from point A to point B. And if that changes back and all that stuff. Absolutely. So then we're getting James Howard Sr. said HARP. HARP, capital letters. Let's talk about that, right? What's that theory about, right?
Well, that's where you start to get into the good stuff there, and that's where it gets a little bit deeper, is that if it's part of the climate control and the weather, changing the weather patterns and stuff, so if you have these nanoparticles or whatever that are dispersed throughout the entire sky and all over the planet and this and that, you can use these HARP centers or these different places that emit these frequencies to actually interact with the metal particles in the air to create these certain patterns. And that's what a lot of people say too, and it makes pretty good sense that it would be tied into to HARP and other places like that, because if you have these suspended particles in the air and you send out a certain frequency, then it'll do whatever you want. Or if you have two centers like this, both emitting a certain pattern of energy, then it could create swirls and tornadoes, or it could block things from coming in or whatever. So that goes back to also that it's not necessarily something bad or nefarious. It could be that it's to control or alter weather patterns or something like that. So I mean, that's actually one of the biggest and the main things people say, is that it ties into HARP and that it's part of the climate control and the weather modification.
And I would have a hard time trying to figure out, how are they keeping those things up in the air at a certain point, because if you're flying through, they would have to be in an area where, we have certain altitudes where we have the passenger planes, and then you have the news media, and then you have the police department in that area, then you have the military, the military is pretty much everywhere, but they have their own area, and then you have the commercial planes. You would have to have it in an area where you wouldn't have somebody flying through there, because if I'm flying through there and I'm boogieing on in a 787 and I hit a cloud of nanites, there's going to be an issue, right? The nanites are going to be kind of screwed up. So how would you keep them in the air? That creates a whole new thing. So are they little teeny, drones? They have little, I don't know. But then they're talking in the chat about gray aliens. right? Do the gray aliens have something to do with it? You know, what is that about? Are they telling us to do it? Because what? You know, a lot of people say that when Ridley Strieber wrote Communion, and he said to them, the reason he called it that because he asked them, what is it that you want? Why are you here? And they said communion. So, you know, there's that theory that the reason that our climate is changing the way it is and that we can't breathe it anymore is because it's more conducive to their climate where it's hotter, where there's more smog in the air. They can breathe it better than we can, just like that movie back in the day. What was that movie that Rowdy Piper was in? What was that? They Live.
They Live.
John Carpenter film, where basically the aliens would change the climate to suit them, and they were here hiding among us, and nobody could see until they put on those sunglasses that actually blocked out their little thing, which was crazy at the time. That was an insane concept because that came out in the 80s. And now if you look forward, that's something that you could go, huh.
Yeah, and actually I've got into that pretty deep before. That's what ties into this. Supposedly there might be a breakaway civilization that most people, even in governments and stuff, don't know about, that are doing a lot of these things like crop circles and maybe some of this spraying and other things. Right. Some type of underground or breakaway civilization, or either just a very small group of elite, you know, select group of people that are in charge of this stuff that most of the other people don't know about. But then that's kind of confusing too, because then you would think, well, what about all the air traffic controllers? And like, is either everybody in the whole field all part of it, or does nobody know and so they're keeping it secret because they don't know, or you know, it gets pretty confusing trying to figure all this stuff out.
That's because that's the same thing when people talk about the conspiracy theory, 9/11 being the American government that put it on. And I said, you know how many people that would have to be in on that conspiracy theory for that to work? You know, you know what I mean? So, and then they just ignore that. The people who talk to will ignore the number of people that have to be involved, and then they just go to the news crew that was supposedly standing there, that was given the order to be there and film it, and then they go to the big fiery flame face devil in there, and then they with no proof whatsoever say there was gold there that was moved there, and that it was supposed to. They were told everybody that it melted down, which they never told anybody. They never said anything about any gold. No one ever said any gold melted down and disappeared. So their theory that it was a gold grab, that they tried to pretend that they brought all the gold from Fort Knox and put it in there, and then stole the gold. And, you know, and every person I've asked, I said, whose gold did they steal? And they said, the people's. We already gave it to our government. They already put it in Fort Knox. We don't know where it is already.
Yeah. Well, supposedly the USA hasn't had any gold for decades now anyway, ever since the Federal Reserve was made, and everything is electronic currency and stuff now too. I'm sure there's gold stashed somewhere, but I just kind of highly doubt that it was all kept under the World Trade Center and stolen. That's why it happened. You know, if there was some there and somebody took advantage of it and got some, maybe. But
if there was gold there, they would have come out and said, well, you know, we had gold there, but it got so hot it just dissipated into nothing, and it turned into liquid and all ran inside the earth, and it's gone now. No one ever said anything. So that conspiracy theory is one of those where it's just a conspiracy theory. Some of these are kind of the same way. You can't, there's no application for it. There's no logical, no matter how much you want to shake your head, you know, and act like a little kid and pretend that there's something there. If I ask you a question and you can't answer it and I'm trying to debunk you, you know, so how come no one ever spoke of the gold again? They were trying to steal it. All they had to do was move it. That's what they did anyway. They already stole it. They already took it from Fort Knox, and it went away, and we don't know where it is, and everyone still thinks it's in Fort Knox. Why would they then secretly move it down there, then secretly pretend it got melted down and not tell anyone that it was there, and not tell anyone it was melted down, and then steal it from there without telling anyone?
I mean, I won't discount anything and say that it's impossible or that it wasn't somehow played in, but I don't think that's the motivating factor, or that it's kind of speculation, really.
The same thing, but see, that's my kind of point. It's the same thing with what's going on with the clouds. We don't know. There's so many theories, and it could be all of them. It could be any one of them. You know, just like we're saying over here, like what happens in Star Trek in their technology happens to us in our technology eventually. You know, it's just like the movies, the Japanese anime movies, and the kids grew up watching the Japanese anime movies, and now they're grown up. They make the car that was in every movie. All the cop cars in every Japanese anime movie in 1980s and 1990s is now an actual car that we drive on the streets. So, you know, so this the whole thing. That's the problem is, and I think the biggest problem is that we can create with our minds anything that we want to put together. And so when somebody thinks it up, when someone's a writer and they think it up, and in their mind they think up something that they think is outlandish, but it's plausible, the reason it's plausible is because even in their mind they know it's plausible, and that they know that somewhere along the line somebody could actually prove that and actually make it happen. So if we're talking about cloud seeding, if we're talking nanites with the technology to be able to hover in the air, if we're talking about the fact that they're making a grid, like Omar said before, where it's some sort of defensive grid up in the sky so that if anybody tries to penetrate with radar or a drone or a plane, a spy satellite, anything to see what's going on here, then it, just like a spider's web, that it goes bing and the whole thing, and you know that something happened right there because it vibrated out of the water. So that's a working theory that I think is something. Why not? Because I've seen them when we get back to talking about over there with my Arizona buddy. Obviously they weren't using that application to seed our clouds because we just don't get any rain. There's not enough moisture. They could try it, but they would have long since 2017 given up on it. I was there until this year. I was there, the same, the clouds were there, but the contrails went, man, from horizon to horizon, and they stayed there for a long time. And then they made the whole sky hazy as they all sort of dissipated, but they all kind of came together. But they made the whole cloud now kind of hazy, the whole thing, and almost like a cloud cover, but not quite. So there is some truth in that, because were they blocking out the sun at that point to help cool that whole area, the whole state, or at least the valley of the whole Phoenix area and the valley? It's possible, man. And it wouldn't take much, because it's not like they're out there. The planes that flew over, most of them were commercial. So what if they have commercial airlines that they're already paying to have certain things done at certain times? When ordered, they just get on the horn and say, flight number B1722 going to Los Angeles out of Phoenix. When you get to 70,000 feet, you want to go ahead and push that button there and turn on that contrail. And, they could. Right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, anything's possible. And I've even heard some people, I was just reading a little while ago, before we started the interview and stuff, somebody saying it's actually even possible that these planes are holographic in nature, and that kind of ties into that whole breakaway civilization thing. Like I've got my high zoom camera and stuff that I've taken some of these photos and videos with, and when you actually zoom in on them, it could just be because of the level of atmosphere that they're into, but they kind of have like a really wavy kind of weird look to them, and they're always unmarked planes, and they just kind of look like they almost could be holographic. Now, I'm not saying that is or isn't what it is, but it could be some type of hologram technology, and that's why maybe a lot of these air traffic controllers don't know about it, or people are like wondering what's going on. I mean, if it is something to do with the aliens or a breakaway civilization or something, it could be there's some type of conflict or war going on, or different groups of people or beings, having different agendas and things going on, and there's just so much to it, you just never can really know. But I do agree with Omar when he said that it's probably creating some type of network or global web of some sort, and all these particles are creating some type of field or web for some type of purpose. Now, using that same technology and logic, after that, you could use it for whatever you wanted to, but I definitely think that this is creating some type of network, grid, spider web system for whatever purpose. Blocking out the sun, anti-radar, alerting people if, like Omar said, that there's some type of UFO activity or some atmospheric thing going on. It'll alert them, or they can send a specific signal or energy pulse to that one area. You can take it many different areas, but I do think that it is creating some type of global network, even if it's only for weather patterns and climate control and stuff like that.
Well, I agree with that, and I want to touch on that. But before we get too far into that, because I have a theory that's going to take us a little bit away from where we're at, but also stay where we are. But before that, you have a couple of videos. Why don't you run one of those videos real quick for people to take a look at, and then we'll talk about your video, and then I want to get into possible theory about why they would be doing that in the Arizona, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas area, and we can talk about that. But why don't you show one of your videos real quick to us here, so we can have the people see one of the things that we've been referring to.
Okay, I've got two. You want me to show both of them, or just do one for now, or
just do both of them back to back, and then we'll talk about this one, and then talk about the second. Do that.
If something happens with the transmission while I'm doing this, just call me right back or something. But it should be all right. So just 1 second here.
Right. Yeah, give it a shot, and we'll see what happens. Otherwise,
all right. Okay. Can you see my screen here?
It'll take a second for it to come up for me because
Okay.
there's that delay. So right now I can just see you, but I don't know if it's up yet. I don't know if they can see it yet.
Okay, maybe I should wait until you can see it and then click on it, or go ahead and start playing it. You think?
If you can just turn it, because I can't see it right now. Normally,
Okay, well I'll just get one going and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
So this is on my channel and it says Geo-Engineering chemtrails being sprayed over Memphis, Tennessee, which is, what I thought at the time. That's what everybody calls them, is chemtrails.
Omar said, hold on a second. So I don't think he can see it either. He said, no, hold on. So let me see what.
Hold on. Maybe I didn't click the button. Here we go.
Yeah, because I don't. Normally, if you hit share screen, it should.
Yeah, I didn't hit I hit share screen and then I didn't hit the start button. So here we go. Okay.
Okay.
Here's the first.
Okay.
All right. Here's the first one. I might need to turn this.
There you go. Perfect.
All right. I've got it zoomed in right now. I'm going to zoom out on the video, and you'll get to see what's going on.
Yeah, I can see it just fine.
Yeah. Now you see they're making that famous crisscross pattern here, and one's just a little bit higher than the other one, but
right.
You can already see it's very hazy where they've been spraying. I actually pulled over in a Walmart parking lot to take this video when I saw how bad it was.
And if you look when you pan back, you can tell that they have already done this earlier because there's a line that goes parallel with the one that's going from the left to the right.
Yeah, I had been seeing it as I was driving, and then I pulled over and was like, I got to get this on video.
Okay.
So you see how hazy it is, and this is where the sun is at too. You can see right there. So that kind of ties into that whole thing about it.
I've talked about before, and my Arizona buddy. See, that's what happens in Arizona as well. See how the sky's hazy? The sky would be perfectly blue, and then they would go out and do that. And you'd have 2 or 3 of those like that, and there would be a couple more, and they'd go flying through the sky. And next thing you know, you had like 5 crisscrossing, and then the sky would turn hazy like that, and it would stay like that for the rest of the day. Now, does that block out some particles? Well, that does have to block out the sun, no matter how you look at it, because we know that clouds block out the heat from the sun. And so when you have all that haze there, it's now blocking out the heat of the sun, and your temperature below that on the planet is going to be less where you're at. Or is that nanoparticles in the air? Something's going on, man, right?
Yeah, you can definitely see how hazy the sky was there, and those trails were lingering. Even on just this little thumbnail here, you can see a normal contrail would probably, stop about here, and you would see a little section here where it would be dissipating, and then about here it would be completely gone. A normal contrail is only going to go, probably a few thousand feet or something before it dissipates, and those ice crystals have evaporated by then. And you've seen the crisscross pattern too.
Yeah, that one we just watched, that was mild. Show the next one. Show the next one.
Yeah, this is a really good close-up I took. Same parking lot, but I zoomed in really close on it. You see, it's blocking out the sun there. It's really hazy, and the sun looks like it's much larger because how hazy it is. Now watch this. This is good.
And you can see the other trails that are there. You're just zooming past them now. So this is going for miles and miles and miles.
Yeah, they just linger for hours, and they just completely cover the entire sky. And you can notice all the ones I've zoomed up on, and I've taken film and videos of pictures. You can't never really see any labels or markings, and that's what a lot of other people have said too, is that they're unmarked planes. So that was just a short one, but that was just getting up close and taking a look at the plane and stuff. So
I was just noting that normally you can tell, and since I'm living over there in Arizona, I could tell what planes were flying in and out because I could see the names on them. And then living here in the Bay Area most of my life, the San Francisco area most of my life, I was able to look around. I could see a FedEx plane because it would say FedEx on it, and it would have the different colors. And if you're down in the city of San Diego or any city where you're close to an airport that's either an international airport or an airport that's a working airport that takes Brown, UPS has their own planes, FedEx has their own planes. All different companies have their own planes. Then you have the different planes that take people everywhere in Southwest and TWA and what's the one where they beat you if you don't move out of your seat fast enough. And they all have different names on the outside of the planes. And the old Hawaii, over in Hawaii, they used to have that big picture of a woman at the back of the plane with the lei and the flowers in her hair. here. So commercial airplanes have pictures.
It's kind of even like a vehicle, even a car. You know, every maker of a car is going to put their logo on the vehicle, or you at least have to have a license plate or some type of identifying marker to know what's going on. And I haven't seen any of these planes that I've taken pictures of, or that I've seen online, or that other people have said. Almost every single one is completely unmarked. I mean, you won't see a M11. You won't see any kind of labels or markings or colors or anything. So
that was Navy sky color. That was U.S. Navy. What color do they call that? U.S. Navy gray. And it was flying, at an incredible rate of speed, and that thing was just hauling ass, and there was contrails coming off of that thing, and it was clearly not marked at all. Sorry, my house phone's ringing. Hopefully, someone else in the other room here will pick it up.
But and even just like you saw in the video, the crisscross patterns, that's the most famous, indicator of them. There is that they make these crisscross patterns, and that would be the best way to do it. So as it dissipates, it would, spread out and cover an even area. If you just did, a lot of them do just do a few straight lines, but then depending on the weather patterns and this and that, it might not evenly disperse. So when they make these crisscross patterns, it will evenly disperse. And also, a lot of them aren't in normal flight patterns. If you think about it, taking off from the airport and stuff, a plane might take off they have to give it a certain amount of time in between each one. So even if it was regular passenger planes and they were going in the same direction, taking off from the Memphis airport, you should see a plane go, and then 2 or 3 minutes later another one go. Like, there's no reason you should really be seeing boom crisscrosses and all this stuff.
That's right. I agree.
Some of them, a regular plane is going to take off low, it's going to ascend, get to its elevation, and it's going to cruise all the way to its destination. Some of these you'll see you won't really see them taking off, but you'll see them low, and you'll see the trail start low, go a little bit higher, and then it'll actually even come back down again. So even if it was a regular contrail, why would a plane be taking off, going up to its elevation, and then coming right back down, and then turning around and doing the same thing and flying in these weird crisscross patterns? It just doesn't really make much sense, even just looking at it logically from that perspective. Why would these planes be flying in these weird patterns?
Right, and military planes. Anybody who's ever been in the military, anyone's ever been in the American military, in any of the planes that you're in, or any vehicle, when they take off, they take off as soon as they get airborne. As soon as they're airborne, and they're going to fly at 100,000 feet, they don't sit there and hover and take their sweet time like passengers planes. They hit a certain degree and they take their time and they slowly climb. No, military planes, man, as soon as they're up off the deck, those things go right up to where they
want to get to their elevation as fast as possible, because then you have less resistance and then you're saving fuel and stuff like that.
Bam. Take off, absolutely. So anybody that's ever been in a passenger plane, you're riding up slowly, but you think you're going fast. You get in a military plane, you see what it's really like, okay? Those guys, even jets, you ever watch them take off? They take off like this, and on the movies, because they're filming a movie, they kind of take their time, and they're flying along like when they go off aircraft carriers. They don't have their wheels down that long when they go off aircraft carriers. Come on, man. Anybody who's ever seen the military act in real life, they're going off those aircraft carriers, and their wheels are down, and they go whoosh, and they launch off there. The second that guy thinks he's past the edge of that deck, he's already pulling at the wheels. By the time that plane levels itself and is no longer hitting the draft from there and hits the draft from the water, that guy's hitting the gas, that sucker, and they're going where they're going. It's the only time that they mess around is with the old planes, because they couldn't go that fast, and then they had to go around and catch the other guys as they came, and they all went around, and that way they'd all line up together and go and bomb somebody.
And living next to the Navy base here, and they do a lot of testing. The base closed down several years ago. They closed down, and it reopened again, but they do a lot of testing here, and like I'll see bombers and all kind of stuff flying. So I do see a lot of different types of planes and military vehicles flying, and even sometimes if they're doing tests, they'll fly right overhead, and then you'll see them come back 10 or 15 minutes later, and they'll go land. And so I mean,
doing touch and go.
Some of these could be testing and this and that, but they wouldn't be leaving these trails behind them too and flying in these weird patterns like that. These are not. You saw that video. That wasn't a bomber or a B-52. That wasn't a cargo plane. That was just some type of, normal size unmarked plane. They weren't test flighting, or they were doing something in particular.
Right. And they don't do that when they're in the military planes. I remember I was working over in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I was working in construction. And there's the city over there where I grew up in. It's called Concord. Anybody that's from Concord, shout outs to Concord. Or probably not. Nobody probably on here from Concord unless my family's on here. But there's an airport over there. It's a small municipal airport. They did fly some larger planes out of there, but the valley that's there is super tight. So the military brought some guys in from Arizona who were going to be flying over in Afghanistan, and they needed to have those guys test and get used to flying in over a mountaintop, a mountain range, diving down into a small airport, a small airstrip, being able to come down to a small airstrip and land in a big B-17, and then take off again. So the guy was doing touch and goes, and it was hilarious because I was sitting at lunch, and the secretary was sitting next to me, and we have our backs to the big bay windows, and beyond that is the airport. And all of a sudden, I hear this aircraft coming in slow, and then I hear the engines hit real hard, and I realize it's a military aircraft by the sound of it. Anybody ever been near a military aircraft, you know the difference between civilian and military aircraft. That's the way they sound. And you should if you've been around them. And the secretary, I said to her, she goes, "What's going on out there?" I said, "Do me a favor and go look out the window and let me know if there's a really big aircraft that shouldn't be landing at that airport that's coming in and doing touch and goes and taking off." And she goes, "What?" And she walks over, she opens up the curtains, and here's this humongous, second largest aircraft that the U.S. military has, and it's coming in over this mountain. We have Mount Diablo over there, Devil's Mountain. It's coming in over Mount Diablo, and that's just a city of Concord. And then it just literally drops down into this airport, and this guy comes down, does a touch and go. He gets down, either hits the ground or just above it, pours the piss to it, shoots up in altitude to about 500 or 1,000 feet, and then cranks that sucker like this sideways and just takes a turn back around that mountain, comes back in again, does it. He did this for about 2 hours. And everybody was calling up, freaking out, and they were like, "It's the military out of Arizona, and da-da-da, and this is why they're doing it." But there was no contrails, even when he was pouring the piss to it.
Exactly.
You have to get a certain height before that's going to happen. And like you said,
That's what I was just about to say, yeah.
It was not a military plane. And what we saw on your tape and what we see normally, and they're unmarked. Unmarked, man. They look like a civilian plane, 737, 787, but there's no markings on them that tell us that they were owned by anyone.
Yeah, the people that try to debunk it and say it's just normal contrails and such, they'll say, well, when you get to a specific altitude, blah, blah, and then I'll show them a picture or a video and say, look at this one. Like, I took a video a few weeks ago. It's on my Facebook timeline. If anybody gets on my page and looks, scroll through, I don't know, 10 or 15 posts, and you'll find a video I posted. But there were some that were very, very low. I didn't see them actually flying over, but I saw the trails, and I mean, it looked like it might have only been a mile up tops. It was pretty low, and so that's not the altitude they will try to tell you that it would need to make the trails. So even if some of these planes were doing some type of touch and go testing, they're not at the altitude they tell you that they need to be to even create the trails in the first place. So I mean, there's just, if you just look at it from a logical point of view and just examine all the evidence, you don't have to believe that it's some huge conspiracy plot to murder people and all this and that, but there's much more evidence that there is some type of something going on other than just normal contrails. It's just that people, I was going to mention this earlier, like you were saying, that people are so programmed to believe that science or authority people are looking out for you and telling you the truth, that you're raised in school and you're told all this and that, or you listen to the weatherman on TV. These people, you want to believe that they're telling you the truth and they're not hiding things from you. So things like this topic here, you kind of have to break it to people easily. You can't just boom, bombard them with all this stuff and force them to try to believe you. That's why I just try to plant these little seeds and like this talk we're having now and go over all the different evidence and discuss it and stuff so people can start looking for themselves and thinking about it. I don't want anybody to just take what I say as absolute truth or try to spread one particular theory, because I don't really know myself. But, looking at all the evidence, you can clearly see that there's something going on. So it's up to the people on their own to form their own conclusions and do more research, but you can't just dismiss the evidence, because everything that the debunkers try to say is just very easily disproven, like the altitude you were mentioning.
Right, and the truth is, absolutely, I agree with you. And the truth is that if I wanted to try and debunk something all day long, I could come up with stuff, and you're going to get back to that coincidence, or you're going to get back to those, those words. But here's what I was starting to get at before about the whole Arizona, New Mexico, Texas thing. Where even Omar put in here, maybe it's to create a magnetic field for human UFO anti-gravity tests. Now, my theory is, now that's not too far off from that. Now, you have to remember that, okay, here's what I want you to look at. The Bermuda Triangle, over in Bermuda, and where that is. And then if you go across the United States and you go out in the Pacific Ocean to the Japanese Dragon Triangle, which is very similar to the Bermuda Triangle, but it's on the other side of the Earth. If you take the parallel to the center of both of those and you take that across the globe on the parallel line, what you're going to find out is that it goes right across Texas, Arizona, and